Hi there, and thanks for tuning in to the latest audio version of this blog, Off-Grid and Ignorant in Portugal, from here in the Valley of the Stars. It's cold, chilly, dark. The stars are bright in the sky. I've got a little bit of a cold, so apologies for the voice. But this episode is called The Big Plan for Our Second Life. Why wine when there's wine? We started the Google search with escarradeira, then moved on to cuspideira, and then we started calling people. A few hours and many phone calls later, we realised we just weren't going to be able to buy any spittoons for our first big wine event at Vale das Estrelas. And there are some pretty compelling statistics for why that might be. Who, you might ask, are the biggest wine consumers in the world? France? Italy? No, and no. At 61.7 litres per person per year, it's Portugal by a long way. So I guess people here don't really feel the need to spit it out. It was explained to us very well by João Barroso of the Alentejo Wine Commission. Wine in Portugal is a staple food, he told us, and that's why the prices are so low, the quality so good, and the consumption rate so high. People here like to lunch for at least a couple of hours every day. Most shops shut, workers gather around a shared dish in their favourite tascaria, and it's all washed down with a jug of table wine and maybe even a shot of the local medronho firewater with a coffee to finish. As foreigners in Alentejo, the options are A. Get stressed about not being able to go to the shops in the middle of the day, or B. Learn to have long lunches. You can imagine which option we've settled on. In The Big Plan for Our Second Life, wine has wound itself into the centre of everything we're doing here. Wine, of course, is all about the story. A good wine can sell for 3 or 4 times the price, if the story's good enough. And what can be better for a storyteller than to ply one's audience with booze while the story unfolds? It's only going to get better. With this in mind, we held our first public event in the valley in partnership with Howard's Folly, a wonderful winery headquartered in the eastern Alentejo town of Estremoz. Howard Bilton is a Yorkshireman we met through a Hong Kong connection, and he makes wine in collaboration with Alentejo's favourite Australian winemaker, David Baverstock. Go online, check out the website we've got, Off-Grid and Ignorant in Portugal, and then there's links on there to take you to the podcast, where we've got David talking about the iconic Esperão winery that he's famous for. I've also written about Howard's Folly before. I checked, it was in 2021. Have I really been writing this blog for that long? I guess I have. Thanks for listening. The winery is run by Howard's son, managing director Tom, who brought their whole range of wines to our stretch of wild coast for the first tasting event. We decided to make a day of it, invite some friends to stay, hire a chef, and put on a proper dinner afterwards, and take the first tentative steps towards running our hospitality business. Our plan is to hold regular events for locals and visitors alike to bring the history and the stories and the wines of the Alentejo interior to the coast. We sent out invitations. Oh, there's Garfy. Sorry, he's a bit upset today because the hunters came through and their dogs were sniffing around earlier, so he's a bit grumpy. Keep it down, Garfs. We sent out invitations and were overwhelmed by the interest, but then had to deliver. A stressful couple of weeks preparing everything followed. It was ambitious to have wine tasting and a dinner in the same place on the same day, having never done this before. But it was also a deadline to get the kitchen ready for professional use and the apartments finished and fully furnished, down to the last knives and forks and whisks and colanders. Thankfully, the weather was beautiful, and 45 people joined the wine tasting outside with our amazing view as a backdrop to the event. Tom was fantastic, the wines were great. We bridged wine and the dinner with more booze, an adventure down the hill for guests to try some medronho, made by our friend George, and kindly hosted by our neighbour Daniel at his house. Our vizinho, or neighbour, has been working some magic on his property recently, totally transforming his whole hillside with plants and trees, landscaping like a demon before winter takes hold. And Daniel was the perfect host. The three-course dinner back up the hill was a huge success, helped along by Howard's wine, and it was great to meet some new folk and bring people together. Our winemaker pal Mauro Azoya, his wife Rita and the kids also joined us and brought a special delivery. A carload of our first Valley of the Stars wine and the labels we'd lovingly created and he had printed. We roped in our friends Danny and Carole and their friends Alfredo and Carol to help us label the first 100 bottles and dip the tops in colourful wax. It's a red wine made entirely out of the Castelao grape, and we use the beautiful image of a sunset over the valley, painted by Ed Sumner, as the artwork for the label. If you look online, it's the banner that we have at the top of the page. The first wine to carry the Vale das Estrelas logo is now available for sale. Come and stay with us and buy one while stocks last. We do have a couple of 100 bottles, but Christmas is coming, so you might not want to leave it quite so long. We still hope to plant our own vineyard in March if finances allow. We've been asking advice from every enologist and viticulturalist who'd listen, on the proviso that we will only plant Portuguese grapes. Close to the ocean and away from the classic Alentejo wine region, we'll have to battle with moisture and the bugs that can bring with it. But it's likely we will plant Castelao for our red wine. So it's even better to be able to have a fantastic Castelao handcrafted by Mauro as our first ever wine. We think Orinto and Alvarinho will be the whites we plant, but the studying continues. We'd love to get it right first time. The wonderful Portuguese adopted Dane, Karsten Jensen, who's the bedrock of the nearby Vicentino winery, paid us a visit to advise how to prepare the land for planting. And we're hoping to secure the plants from Darina Lindemann and her Plancel nursery. It's an amazing process seeing how they prepare the vines by grafting Portuguese varietals onto American rootstock, as they have done since the phylloxera bug first devastated Europe's vineyards in the late 1800s. That's episode 3 of our podcast series, Anna and Al's Big Portuguese Wine Adventure, and we think it's worth a listen. And it also features us learning to spit out wine for the first time. Speaking of which, we may not have had any cuspideiras available for Howard's Folly, but as sensible grown-up wine people, we did buy some vases, which could be suitably repurposed. Suffice to say, they weren't needed. But we do now have a few spittoons on order for next time, and the time after that. Thanks again for listening. I'll speak to you soon.